You know, some days the news is all chaos, other days it feels like we might actually be getting somewhere. As for today though, my friends, I'd like to say we got a bit of both. In today's show, South Africa could become a global launch pad for SpaceX, Stats SA pushes back on Capitec's claims about unemployment stats, and we break down this growing fallout from this year's Comrades Marathon. Plus, Rabada climbs the all-time test wicket charts, the junior box gear up for Italy, and in one of the most ambitious conservation moves ever attempted, 70 rhinos have just touched down in Rwanda. Let's get into it. And kicking us off with current affairs, South Africa could soon become a launch pad for SpaceX rockets, with Elon Musk reportedly eyeing the Overberg test range near Arniston for future satellite missions. You see, according to two sources in South Africa's space sector, the idea came up in a closed-door White House meeting between Musk, President Trump, and a couple of South African officials. You see, Musk's interest here is launching satellites from South Africa that orbit over the poles, ideally for global coverage, as well as sourcing key minerals used in high-tech components. You see, it's a move that could align South Africa with a growing global demand for low Earth orbit infrastructure and finally put our space sector on the commercial map. So this Overberg site, which is backed by UKZN's Aerospace Systems Research Institute, has already tested locally built rockets and a 6-story launch tower. Furthermore, it's aiming for full orbitable missions by 2028. And if SpaceX jumps in, that could happen much sooner. South Africa could quite literally become the continent's gateway to space. And onto our quick-fire mentions. Ramaphosa will meet with US President Donald Trump again this weekend at the G7 summit in Canada, part of his push to secure a trade deal and lock in Trump's attendance at the G20 handover in Johannesburg later this year. The public sector is clamping down on foreign hires. New rules will limit non-citizens to 3-year contracts, with departments expected to actively train local staff to fill these roles over time. And our mining minister has backtracked on a major clause in the new mining bill, quietly dropping BEE requirements for early stage exploration after legal experts warned it would tank investment in the sector. And onto our finance section. As mentioned in yesterday's show, Capitec CEO Khadi Fourie says that South Africa's real unemployment rate is not 32.9%, it is closer to 10%. Now, his argument here is that the stats ignore millions of informal traders earning real income outside of formal systems. Now, Stats SA was very quick to disagree. They say that they do include informal workers, which is defined by international standards as people who aren't registered for tax and who work in very small operations, typically with fewer than 5 employees. But here's the catch though, and this is pretty interesting. Those figures come from household surveys, and researchers warn that these low-income respondents underreport on work to keep their social grants. And that makes perfect sense. So while Stats SA follows the rulebook, that doesn't mean the data captures the full picture. So yeah, the informal sector is real, it's massive, but if we're serious about tackling unemployment, we need to start measuring it more honestly. So business confidence nudged up slightly in May, with the latest business confidence index rising to 115.8, a modest rebound after April's dip. Now you see, this improvement was driven by a stronger rand, rising JSE share prices, and a high global demand for our gold and platinum. And on a year-on-year basis, sentiment is still well above where it was in 2024. But look, under the surface, there's hesitation. Manufacturing is slowing, building plans are down, and tourism hasn't exactly bounced back. You see, the SACCI says that the strong start to 2025 is beginning to fade, with investor caution returning as US tariffs loom and local GDP growth slips below 1%. So in short, our financial environment is helping, but the real economy isn't exactly pulling its weight. And onto our quickfire mentions. Treasury says it still needs to raise 20 billion rand in 2026, but raising corporate tax is very unlikely. At 27%, South Africa's rate is already higher than most global peers, and any increase could really choke growth. HSBC's exit from South Africa is almost final. The bank is currently transferring local clients, staff, and assets to FirstRand, a move that cements RMB's push to dominate multinational corporate banking. And macadamia farmers are looking to India as a fallback market, with US tariffs still hanging in the air. citrus exporters warn that up to 35,000 jobs are on the line. And onto our sports section. The Comrades Marathon Association has firmly denied reports that 2 runners died during Sunday's race, calling the claims fake news. CMA says that all the runners were accounted for, with only standard medical transfers to hospital. But while that fire has been put out, a deeper one is still smoldering. So across social media, runners have voiced frustration, from missed elite water bottles to complaints about the 2-wave start, cramped finish lines, and what many see as a steady decline in race day organization. Open letters and blunt public posts called the events amateurish and chaotic, especially given its near 100-year legacy. Now, interestingly enough, some of this criticism echoes what a number of runners said this year about the 2 oceans: poor planning, cost cutting, and athletes left to fend for themselves. If you were at the Comrades this year, or even brave enough to have taken part, we'd love to hear about your experience of the event. And onto our quick fire mentions. The Springbok woman held off a late surge from Kenya to win 19-12 and stay unbeaten at the Rugby Africa Cup. Sloppy finishing nearly cost them the game, but now they'll face the hosts Madagascar on Sunday in their final pool match. The Proteas opened the bowling in the World Test Championship final against Australia yesterday, and boy did they make it count. They bowled out all the Aussies on day 1, with KG Rabada taking 5 wickets in the innings. That haul pushes him past Alan Donald to become South Africa's 4th highest wicket taker in Test history. And the Junior Boks have finally named a strong squad for this year's Under-20 World Championship in Italy, featuring 5 returning players and a core group that's been training together since November. Good luck, boys. Now, before we continue, here's your bagel bite of the day. If you live in the Western Cape or have just visited, you've probably spotted a dusty or 2. Those chunky little rock rabbits lounging around on cliffs or scrambling over boulders. Now, with that in mind, what do you think is their closest living relative? Is it A, the rabbit, B, the guinea pig, or C, the elephant? We'll give you the answer at the end of the next section. And onto our wildcard section. Look, in a world that often feels heavy, this week brought something extraordinary. 70 southern white rhinos from South Africa were safely relocated to Rwanda in one of the largest cross-border rewilding missions ever attempted. This was part of the Rhino Rewild Initiative, which has been this bold plan to move 2,000 captive-bred rhinos to safe, well-managed reserves across Africa, restoring ecosystems and protecting one of the continent's most endangered species. Now, as for the journey of these 70 rhinos, they experienced a 3,400-kilometer trip by truck, Boeing 747, and finally convoy, ending in Rwanda's Akagera National Park. And look, in a time full of crisis fatigue, let this serve as a reminder that the world is still full of good people doing great things. And I hope you're one of them. And as for that bagel bite, the answer is the elephants. I am not kidding. Dusty's, despite looking like oversized rodents, share an ancient ancestry with elephants. They've got similarly structured feet with padded soles, tusk-like incisors that never stop growing, and even skull features that trace back to a common ancestor. And my friends, that's it for today's show, but I just want to leave you with this. At some point, someone had the wild idea to move 2,000 rhinos across Africa, and they're doing it. So no matter how big, bold, or downright strange your dreams might be, it's not impossible. So get on after it. I'll catch you guys all tomorrow. Cheers.